Picture Marcelo Bielsa, one of the most respected football minds in the game. His Uruguay side, two-time World Cup winners, sitting frozen on the cooler as 8 minutes of stoppage time slowly disappear. And across the pitch, a team fighting for every blade of grass, dancing, throwing bodies in front of shots, celebrating every clearance like they've just scored a winner. A team from 10 tiny islands in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean that most people watching probably couldn't point to on a map. A nation of just 500,000 people, smaller than the city of Bristol, taking points from a country that has lifted this trophy twice before. The underdogs making history. That is the image of this World Cup. And it's FIFA's worst nightmare, because FIFA created it. To understand why, we need to start with why these tiny nations are here in the first place. That's where the irony kicks in. FIFA expanded the World Cup from 32 teams to 48. 12 groups of 4. 104 matches instead of 64. The reason was never romance. It was money. More teams meant more matches. More matches meant more TV deals, more ticket sales, more sponsors, and more money flowing into FIFA's pockets. The expansion was sold as a way to make football truly global, a chance for nations that had never been on this stage before, countries like Cape Verde and Curaçao. But here's the part FIFA will never say out loud. They never expected those teams to matter. The logic was simple. Let the minnows arrive. Give everyone a feel-good story. Let the giants beat them. Fill out the schedule. Then send them quietly home, while the traditional powers march toward the latter rounds, where the real money is made. A Spain versus Brazil quarterfinal prints money. A Cape Verde versus Curaçao knockout game does not. More games for the money. The giants going deep for even more money. That was the plan. The plan lasted about 90 minutes, because on opening day, Cape Verde, the Blue Sharks, walked out for the first World Cup match in their history against Spain, the reigning European champions. A team many pundits and prediction models had picked to win the entire tournament. Pedri, Lamine Yamal, Rodri. A squad loaded with stars from Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Manchester City. And yet Cape Verde, backed by 40-year-old goalkeeper Vozinha and his 7 saves, held them to a goalless draw. Spain couldn't break down a team making its World Cup debut. The reaction was predictable. People shrugged. Just a fluke. Just Spain shaking off the rust. They'll fade away. Then came match 2, and that's when the fluke theory completely fell apart. Because standing on the other side was Uruguay, 2-time world champions, 15-time Copa America winners, a squad packed with players from Real Madrid, Manchester United, and Tottenham. And Cape Verde didn't show up to survive. They came to attack. 20 minutes in, Kevin Pina stood over a free kick from 28 yards out. For reasons nobody could explain, the Uruguayan wall split apart, and his strike flew past veteran goalkeeper Fernando Muslera. Cape Verde had scored their first ever World Cup goal, and they were leading. In the stands, the goalkeeper's mother watched it all unfold. A woman who had feared she might not even be able to afford the visa needed to make the trip. Now she was watching her son's team take down one of football's aristocrats. On the touchline, Bubista, dressed in blue denim and a t-shirt, was out-coaching Marcelo Bielsa. Uruguay responded with 2 soft goals and suddenly led 2-1. That should have been the end of it. The natural order restored, except Cape Verde refused to follow the script. After a defensive disaster from Uruguay, Elio Varela pounced, slipped through, and calmly tucked home the equalizer, his first ever goal for his country. Then came the celebration. Varela danced with his teammates while Bielsa sat frozen on the sideline. 2-2. With 8 minutes of stoppage time remaining, it was Cape Verde, the island nation, finishing stronger and pushing for more. Afterward, Bielsa could only admit that his team had been, in his own words, disorganized. He also acknowledged that if Uruguay truly were the better side, they would now have to prove it. Think about that for a second. A 2-time world champion was suddenly staring at elimination, and a country of 500,000 people had put them there. So, who exactly are these guys? Cape Verde is an archipelago of 10 islands sitting around 600 kilometers off the coast of West Africa. Its population is just over 500,000, with a diaspora of roughly the same size living in the United States, which just so happens to be where their group stage matches are being played. Their road here wasn't easy. They opened qualifying with a draw against Angola, got hammered 4-1 by Cameroon, then responded by winning 7 of their final 8 matches. The result? They finished top of their group ahead of Cameroon, the 5-time African champions. Their squad is a perfect reflection of the Cape Verdean diaspora. 26 players representing 25 clubs across 14 different countries. In fact, more players in the squad were born in Rotterdam than in Cape Verde's own capital. And now, after just 2 matches, 1 win over Saudi Arabia would send them into the knockout rounds of a World Cup they had never even qualified for before. The story changed fast. First, it was nice just to be here. Then it became, can they survive the group? Now the question is something very different. How far can these guys actually go? And the craziest part? Cape Verde isn't even the only underdog causing problems, because the other half of FIFA's nightmare comes from a team with a completely different story. Then there's Curaçao, a Caribbean island sitting just off the coast of Venezuela with a population of around 156,000 people. The smallest nation by both population and land area ever to qualify for a World Cup in the tournament's 96-year history. To put that into perspective, the stadium hosting the final could hold more than half of Curaçao's entire population, and their World Cup started exactly the way FIFA's critics expected. Germany crushed them 7-1. For one brief afternoon, it felt like the critics had been proven right. See, the 48-team format is a joke. These teams don't belong here. The World Cup is being watered down. Then 6 days later, Curaçao did something nobody saw coming. They walked out against Ecuador, a team loaded with talent from clubs like Arsenal and Paris Saint-Germain, and held them to a scoreless draw. The hero was 37-year-old goalkeeper Eloy Room, a player who had spent much of his career on the bench. A player who suddenly produced one of the greatest goalkeeping performances the World Cup has ever seen. 15 saves, the most by any goalkeeper in a 90-minute World Cup match since records began in 1966. Just 1 save short of the all-time tournament record, a mark that required extra time to set. Watching from the stands were the King and Queen of the Netherlands. Reports even claimed the Queen kissed Room afterward in the dressing room. Meanwhile, their 78-year-old coach, the oldest manager in World Cup history, broke down in tears at the final whistle. He said they came from nothing and fought like lions. Room had his own response. He joked that he deserved a statue back home. And one commentator captured the madness of it perfectly. A rock in the ocean has a point at the World Cup, and that's the contrast driving FIFA crazy. Cape Verde, the fearless newcomers who look like they belong here. Curaçao, the tiny nation that got embarrassed and refused to disappear. 2 completely different stories. One identical conclusion. These smaller teams aren't here to make up the numbers. They're taking points, they're damaging reputations, and they're forcing their way into the knockout round conversation. And the format FIFA created for profit is exactly what's allowing it to happen. Because in this 48-team World Cup, the top 2 teams from every group advance, along with the 8 best third-place finishers. That means an underdog doesn't have to win the group. It doesn't even have to finish second. 1 surprise draw, 1 clean sheet, 1 heroic goalkeeping performance. And suddenly, you're alive. FIFA built a tournament with more doors than ever before. Now the minnows are walking through every single one of them. This is the controversy FIFA never expected. The expansion was built on the assumption that the giants would go deep and the smaller nations would quietly go home. Instead, look at who's actually feeling the pressure. Turkey, one of the tournament's pre-tournament dark horses, is already out. Belgium and its golden generation are staring at an early exit. And Uruguay, 2-time world champions, are suddenly in real danger. And right now, it's the islands moving forward. FIFA wanted the giants. Instead, it's getting giant killers. That's the nightmare. Not because the format failed, because it worked a little too well for exactly the wrong teams. Every round one of these tiny nations survives is another round where a bigger, richer, and far more marketable country risks going home. And honestly, it's probably the best thing that's happened to this entire chaotic tournament. After the empty seats, the outrageous ticket prices, the visa problems, the VAR controversies, and even the stories of referees being delayed at the border, the underdogs have become the one genuinely joyful thing FIFA accidentally created. And history tells you exactly why they matter. This is the most exclusive trophy in sports. In more than 90 years of World Cup history, Only 8 nations have ever won it. Only 13 have even reached a final. The Giants usually win in the end. But the underdog run is the soul of the tournament. Costa Rica in 2014 dropped into a group with 3 former world champions, Uruguay, Italy, and England, then finishing top and sending both Italy and England home. Morocco in 2022, the first African and Arab nation ever to reach a World Cup semi-final, eliminating Spain, Portugal, and Belgium along the way. South Korea reaching the Final Four in 2002. Croatia, a country of barely 4 million people, reaching a final and later another semi-final. These are the stories people remember. They're why we watch. They're what make the World Cup the greatest show in football. And when you step back and look at the bigger picture, the irony is almost perfect. FIFA expanded the World Cup to squeeze more money out of the giants. Instead, it may have accidentally built the perfect stage for giant killers. The very teams that were expected to fill space and quietly disappear are now stealing the spotlight, and maybe even stealing knockout places too. Cape Verde, a nation of 500,000 people, 90 minutes away from reaching the last 32. Curaçao, a rock in the ocean, with a point on the board and a goalkeeper joking that he deserves a statue. And with every step they take forward, a bigger, wealthier, more profitable football nation edges closer to the exit. That's FIFA's worst nightmare, and it might just be the best thing about this World Cup. So now I want to hear from you. Who's your underdog? Are you backing the Blue Sharks all the way to the knockout rounds? Or do you think the Giants will take control before the group stage is over? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe if you want World Cup coverage that cheers for the little guy while following the bigger story behind the game.